Hey guys. Okay, so earlier this week I posted a Tip Tuesday that was all about pre-1911 dwellings. More specifically, I was pointing out the fact that the standard demolition exemptions that apply to character allotments do not apply to dwellings built in or before 1911. And you cannot rely on the pre-1911 overlay to work out whether something was built in or before 1911. Today I want to sort of build on this or elaborate on this topic because council is really starting to crack down on this issue, and we've had quite a few clients that have been bitten by it recently. So if you're a building designer or you're an architect and you like to deal with houses or renovations to houses that were built before 1947, this video is for you. Okay, so I've been meaning to record this video for probably about a month now, and I just keep putting it off and off and off. The problem is there is just so much information out there when it comes to pre-1911 houses, and I don't know how I'm going to squeeze it all into one little video, but I'm going to give it my best shot. Hopefully at the end it all makes sense to you guys. So let's kick off. Let's start with why pre-1911. So back in 2011, when Brisbane City Council was developing City Plan 2014, they were under a lot of pressure from the public to ramp up, intensify I guess you'd say, their character provisions. They sat there and they looked at the traditional building character overlay, formerly called demolition control precinct provisions, and they went, if we step up those, that's going to have a massive impact across the city. There is just a bucket load of houses that are protected under the traditional building character overlay, so we really can't touch that. But what we can do is create another sort of middle category between the pre-1947 stuff and the heritage listed stuff. So back then, like I said, it was 2011. What they decided to do was create this additional category to protect houses that were more than 100 years old. 2011 minus 100 years equals 1911. So unlike 1946, 1947, that marks a specific point in time. So we had just finished the war, we were seeing dramatic shifts in terms of our construction styles, the affordability of houses, all that sort of stuff. So that is an actual point in time, an actual marker, a historical marker. Pre-1911 isn't really a historical marker. It is literally just 100 years before the point in time when they started looking at all this stuff. Anyway, so that's what they decided they were going to do. They were going to create this whole new category of protection. So what they did, I don't know whether get my words out. It's been a long day. I don't know whether the architect sat there on Street View and just looked at every single house by house, or whether they actually got out and walked around the streets. But either way, what they did was they worked out what houses gave them pre-1911 vibes. So which houses looked like or had characteristics that looked like they were built before 1911. Now, I'm absolutely kicking myself because I did have the figures, I did have the numbers, but unfortunately I can't seem to find them anywhere. Let's just say for argument's sake, they found 10,000 different houses across Brisbane. We'll pick a nice round number. 10,000 houses across Brisbane that they believed could have been built in or before 1911. They then went through and worked out how many of those 10,000 houses they could actually back up in court. So if someone challenged them in a court of law, how many of those houses could they hand on heart prove were built in or before 1911? Now they use things like electoral records, postal records, all of that sort of stuff to work out whether people were actually living on the properties at that point in time. The other, and let's say that probably ruled out 75%. Again, I'm just using random figures here because I can't find those damn figures. They ruled out, let's say, 75% of the houses that they believed were pre-1911. They didn't rule them out completely. What they did is they just parked them temporarily. So they took the 25% and put them into the pre-1911 overlay. They were the ones that they could definitely back up in court. And these ones, they sat there and went, we'll come back to you. We'll look at you later. So that is how we came up with the 1911 date and what led to the creation of the overlay. What is the implication for you? Well, number one, if the property is constructed in or before 1911, but not in the 1911 overlay, it is still protected. So if you look at the traditional building character overlay, the level of, well, I shouldn't say level of assessment, I should be using my current terminology, category of assessment, you will see that any external demolition work on a house that was built in or before 1911 is assessable. So let me just let that sink in for a moment. What that essentially means is the standard exemption, which covers demolition work beyond the highest and rearmost ridge on a standard traditional building character overlay allotment, And if you don't know what I mean by that, go back and watch that previous video that we recorded on that exact topic. But essentially, super simple terms, the exemption that allows you to demolish the rear half of the house does not apply if the house was built in or before 1911. It doesn't say in or before, or no, sorry, it doesn't say if listed in the pre-1911 overlay. It says if it was built in or before 1911. So the onus is on you to work out whether a property was built in or before 1911. We will get to that later on in terms of what you look for, but that's the first major implication. So why is this an issue now? It's always been there ever since City Plan 2014 first came into effect. But we as an industry sort of went, we're town planners, they're building designers, they're architects, we're not historians. None of us can work out what's pre-1911. It's unreasonable to ask or put that onus on us. And for a long time, everyone just put in the too hard basket. We went, yeah, we don't quite know how to deal with this. We'll just ignore it. We'll just turn a blind eye. For whatever reason, council, maybe Brisbane's future blueprints brought it about, whatever's happened, council has started to crack down on this. So now, whenever we lodge an application, let's say it's for an extension to the side of a character house, so we want to do a garage that's sticking out to the side, and our plans also show work at the rear, if it shows elements of, or if it shows pre-1911 vibes, which again, I'll get to, then council is coming back to us and actually saying, hey, by the way, we've noticed you've done some work at the rear. Can you just confirm that house is not pre-1911 construction? And this is how it's coming up with clients and biting clients on the backside. So again, I stress, previously, or when it comes to a standard traditional building character overlay allotment, super simple terms, you can chop the rear half of the house off. That exemption does not apply to pre-1911 dwellings, which means the demolition work beyond the ridge is accessible, means council sees it, you have to pay money for it, they have control over the outcome. The rules and requirements actually allow them the ability to restrict the amount of demolition work that's actually supported, approved, whatever you want to call it. So essentially there's two impacts that you get, three, which are kind of interrelated. Number one, it triggers assessment by council. Number two, that attracts a fee. Number three, it attracts time. And number four, there we go, we'll create a fourth one now. Number four, they limit what you can get away with. So we've found a few jobs recently. I think, if I'm going to say we've had it come up on 5 jobs probably, only 1 out of those 5 jobs have we actually been able to prove was not pre-1911. And we used a historical title search to do that. So we proved it was subdivided, I think it was 1914 or something. Every other job, we haven't been able to prove it. So what we've had to do is go down the path of modifying the design to reduce the amount of demolition work that's actually proposed. So that's, man, this is going to be a big video. Okay, so that's the renovation stuff. When it comes to the full demolition stuff, the rules, when it comes to a pre-1947 house, so post-1911 to 1947, the demolition rules essentially say, I think it's like 3 or 4 different options you have. One of those options says that the building must be structurally unsound and beyond reasonable repair. So money comes into it. Money is a slight consideration. It's a ridiculously high figure, no one can ever hit it, but technically the reasonableness argument comes into it. When the house was built in or before 1911, the word reasonable disappears. There is only one criterion that you can apply for demolition under, and that criterion simply says the building must be structurally unsound and beyond repair. No reasonableness, nothing else that needs to be drawn in or considered. It's just simply, can it be repaired? Okay, well, it has to stay. You can't remove it. Can it physically not be repaired? Okay, then we will consider it. So basically, you got no chance. If you could throw $1 million at a build, which, hey, let's be honest, technically people could do, and it can be repaired, council's not going to support the demolition. So basically you go from having, let's say, a 10% chance of success for a demolition anywhere else across the city when it comes to pre-1947 dwellings, down to a 0.00000001 chance. Well, that's poor maths. You get what I'm trying to say. Really, really limited chance of success. So now we come to the important question. What do we look for? I've been very fortunate within my career to be able to work very closely with a lot of architects and designers that focus on this stuff. So focus on the traditional building character houses. Let me get my words out. They've taught me a few tricks over the years, but also, let me just grab, I like to refer to this as my yellow Bible. It is Brisbane's housing styles from 1880 to 1940, a guide to the affordable house. It is incredible. It basically documents the most common housing styles from, 1880 to 1940. And you can actually go through that and go, oh, hold on a sec, that matches that. So that means it was built at this time period. Go get one of these. They're magnificent. I love them. But anyway, some of the tips that I've picked up over the years. Let's start with this one here. Back in the old days, our housing demands, or our demands for housing sizes, what am I trying to say here? Our housing demands, let's just stick with that, were a lot different to what we have now. Back then, we used to build houses that had 1 room, 2 rooms, a little hallway, a veranda along the front, and maybe a kitchen or something else at the back there, a bathroom. So they were teeny tiny little houses. Nowadays, every kid has a bedroom, every kid has an ensuite. It's ridiculous. We've just gone way overboard. Anyway, the point I'm trying to make is if you see a house that is, if the original house, so it may have additions on the back that were done post 1946, but if you look at the original footprint and it was teeny tiny, like 2 bedrooms teeny tiny, that to me screams super old. Next, if we see a super steep roof pitch, that again is another alarm bell for me. So if you go and you see, I don't know, over 45 degrees, yeah, that's an alarm bell. You need to go, ooh, that could be pre-1911. Next thing I look for is a detached veranda. So back in the old days, this sounds really mean, but I'm not trying to be mean, they didn't have the skills or the capabilities, from what I've been told, to be able to do those single roof spans. So what they used to do is do 1 roof form there and then split and do a second roof form on the front veranda. Sometimes you'd see it just a skillion roof, but more often than not, the really old ones are the bullnose roofs. So wherever you see those curved sort of roof forms sticking over the veranda, that again should be another alarm bell to go, ooh, pre-1911. Now, this one makes me laugh. A couple of years ago, one of our favourite building designers sent me a set of plans. He likes to be, let's call him obnoxious sometimes. You're watching? I know, you know who I'm, yeah. Anyway, he had on his plans this term called bastard roof. I sat there and went, buddy, come on, you've got to fix up your plans. I know you don't think too highly of council, but you can't write that sort of stuff on your plans. He came back and pointed out that it was a legitimate term. There is actually a term out there called a bastard roof, believe it or not. Anyway, I've been told now that a bastard roof, so a bastard roof essentially is where you have a single span of roof and then a slight kick out. So to passing, like a really quick glance, it would just look like it's one, let me try and get my hand in the right position here, 1 sheet of roof. But actually what it does, I should go like this, hey. Okay, so instead of like that, it slightly kicks out, ever so slightly. That is a bastard roof, and that is characteristic of pre-1911. Now, double hung windows. So if you have the windows, I remember this as a kid. I used to live at Taringa. We had the most beautiful house. You pick it up and you lift it up, and it basically lifts up, as I just said. Yeah, your window still lifts up and overlaps on top of each other. Double hung window, that is another very old characteristic. I learnt this one the other day. If you walk through the house and it's a very old sort of house and the original doors are still intact and they have 4 panels, that again is a very pre-1911 sort of thing. And I've already mentioned my yellow book. That's where I get all my information from these days. Okay, and one thing I was going to say, if you're a heritage expert and you're watching this video, so I'm talking to Peter, Caitlin, Rebecca, anyone else that I know watches these videos, if you've got any other tips or tricks on what to look for, so alarm bells or signs, please comment below, help us out. Okay, so we've talked about what to look for. Now we come to the all-important question, what does it mean for you? Well, we've already established here, if you turn up to a property and you're doing an initial assessment or initial design on a property and you see a teeny tiny original footprint or a super steep roof pitch or a detached front veranda with a bullnose on it or a bastard roof or doors or windows that match those older sort of designs, that needs to be an alarm bell for you. You need to sit down and alert the client to the fact that any external demolition work could be protected, or basically any external demolition work could be accessible. And if it's accessible, it means extra money, extra time, and reduced chances of success with council. So the first step then is to go, okay, can we disprove it? Is there anything that the owner has access to in terms of old photos or neighbour stories or historical title searches or anything like that that you can use to disprove the theory that it might be a pre-1911 house? If you can, sweet, go on your merry way, don't think anything more about it. If you can't, then you need to try and restrict the extent of demolition work that you're proposing on that house. Keep in mind, obviously, it's going to be assessed by council. They're not going to like a lot of demolition work, and that's obviously going to have major impacts on your design. And obviously demolition, I never recommend anyone does a full demolition application anyway, because the chances of success are so slim. The minute you go, well, with me, you're looking at a pre-1947 dwelling, but if it's pre-1911, you just got no chance. No chance whatsoever. Not going to happen, people. Not going to happen. You get it? So yeah, you need to keep that in mind when you first start the design process. Ask some questions. Heritage architects, we can definitely put you in touch with some. Most are happy to come out and do an initial verbal assessment for a fixed fee, and then if that verbal assessment's favourable, you can pay them some more money to put it in writing, and then you use that to go to council. So you can get them out, but like I suggested at the beginning, the problem is when you're dealing with pre-1947, so 1946 to 1947 sort of timeframes, there is a very clear difference in the construction styles that occurred in those two different time periods. Because that's not a historical marker, because it's just a random point in time, we don't have those distinct markers you can't look at the construction techniques, you can't look at the materials and get that clear evidence. So it makes it a lot harder, unless you're seeing very obvious features like this, it makes it a lot harder for those historians to try and work out how old the house was just by looking at it. Often they will come back, and if you don't have the extra records in terms of photos or historical title searches or electoral records or anything to help prove or disprove the age, or prove the age I should say, unfortunately they may not be able to give you that hard evidence. So even though you can pay for these people to come out, which is very interesting, I love tagging along to those inspections, it's very interesting, but it doesn't always give you the hard answer that you actually want. What if you can't date it? I don't know. To be honest, I haven't faced that situation yet. So like I said, we've had it on maybe 5 different jobs. One of those jobs we were able to prove it was actually subdivided in 1914, which meant we were safe. Another job, the client actually had a photo that suggested it was built before 1911, so we just hung ourselves and basically said, yep, we'll reduce the extent to demolition, we'll pay the extra fees, and we'll just go down the assessment path just to keep it nice and straight and simple. The other jobs we've got, in one of them, we got a heritage architect out. She went through and she pointed out all the things like the bastard roof. I still can't get over that term. The doors, the double hungs, the mitred verandas, all that sort of stuff. And as a result, the balance of probability was it was going to be pre-1911. So we've again started going down the path of designing on that basis. The other ones, we haven't quite worked out what we're going to do there. So eventually we'll get to the point where someone says, I'm going to hold my ground. I don't believe I'm pre-1911. And council's going to go, well, we're seeing pre-1911 elements. Who's going to win? I don't know. It'll end up in court, and it'll be interesting to see what happens there. I would never recommend anyone goes to court. I'll keep repeating that. It's a lot of money and a lot of time for house jobs, house renovations, that sort of stuff. It's just not worth it. So please don't be that person. I think that covers everything I wanted to talk about. That's a lot of information to take in. The short answer is the short message I want to get across today is if you turn up and you see any of these sort of characteristics, then that needs to be an alarm bell to you to go, oh, the design options on this property could be significantly reduced. We need to start asking questions. Those questions, if you want to direct them to me in the first instance, I'm more than happy to give you my thoughts and my advice. But then the best option is probably to, number one, see what the owners have got in terms of historical information or what they can get their hands on. And then if that doesn't work, get a historian involved. So hopefully it all makes sense. If you guys got any more comments, thoughts, especially the historian people or heritage architects, that's what I'm trying to say. The heritage architects watching this video, you want to add more comments, please, please, please do so below. Until next time, thanks for watching.
For all you red tape lovers out there, I have one thing to say. Well, no, actually, I've got 3. Number 1, the advice provided in these videos is general in nature. It's not site specific. You would be a silly Billy to go and make financial decisions based on this advice without first checking with the town planner. Don't be a silly Billy. Number 2, Brisbane town planning is in no way linked to Brisbane City Council. The views expressed in these videos are my own, not council's. So if you don't like them, blame me, not council. Number 3, what was my number 3? Oh yeah, the views expressed in these videos are accurate at the time of recording. If you're watching this video back 10 years from now, the views may not be so accurate. That's all. Bye.